We're back. Okay. Honey, there we go. We are back. The headless YouTuber doing headless planty things with our trusty Pug Pudge, who will be snoring with me here today and who somehow cannot get comfortable. We have a long one today. I'm just kind of taking a look at my notes here about everything I want to cover in this video, and it's a lot. So I probably will only ever do one video about alocasias. So I want it to cover pretty much everything that I know about alocasias, everything that I want to tell you guys about what I know about alocasias, and also answer your questions. I opened up my question box on Instagram to see what everyone wanted to know, and a lot came in, and more things that I even initially was going to talk about. So I'm really happy I did that. But just a forewarning, it's gonna be a long one. In this first part, it's not gonna be a two-part video. I just mean in the first part of this video, we're gonna be out here. I'm gonna show you the alocasias that I have, answer a few questions, and then the rest of the questions that I have and the things that I wanna talk about, we will talk about it in the plant room when I actually do some repotting and show you guys some examples of things. Before we get into the video, I am just going to show you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 alocasias that I have. Surprisingly, I don't have that many, and the reason is because I jumped into alocasia care, or I jumped into alocasia ownership very, very fast. I used to have probably around 10 to 12 alocasias before, and this was kind of when I was still learning about them and experimenting with them and doing a lot of trial and error, and I lost a lot on the way. So now I'm just down to the 6 that I have, and now that I'm feeling a lot more confident with my alocasia care and just generally understanding the things that they like and don't like, I will definitely be adding more to my collection. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So today is all about alocasias. If you hate alocasias because of how finicky they can be, please watch this video, even if you're just gonna fast forward through certain parts. I will say off the bat that I used to really struggle with alocasias, and I just could not for the life of me figure out what they wanted, figure out how to get out of the one leaf club, how to stop leaves from dying, how to stop getting spider mites, and I was like, what is the appeal to having alocasias when they're this hard to grow? But after having my alocasia micholitziana maxkowskii, that one was kind of my guinea pig. I used to have 3 of them, and I no longer have any because, again, it was my guinea pig. I used it for all of my experiments, and it just went through so much. And then finally, it just croaked after it couldn't take any more repotting, prodding at, and moving around. But luckily, I do have a few examples here to show you of successful propagation, successful acclimations, and I just think that, like, if you love alocasias and you're just not sure on how to care for them or how to get started, watch this video. I might be able to change your mind, and if I don't, that's okay too. But I will just say that I am pretty confident that some of the things that I'm going to highlight here today will really help in your alocasia journey. So anyway, that was too much of an intro. Let's just get started. I think I'm going to pause a little bit on this intro and just kind of get some cuddles in with my boy before I put him away. And it looks like he has fully fallen asleep here. He's actually drooling on my arm. You're a sleepy boy today, aren't you? You're a sleepy boy. Look at this drool on me. I am wearing pants, by the way. They're just very short shorts. This is my alocasia silver dragon that I grew from a corm. I got this one from my friend Nick, and this was one of the first leaves. Pudge, please. Shh. This was one of the first leaves on it, and it had some trouble sizing up, and I think it's because I had it in perlite for so long. It didn't really like just being in pure perlite. All of the leaves, I'm never gonna get through this video. This one had a little bit of a rough start after I grew it from a corm. It had leaves smaller than this, and for the first little bit, all of the leaves were this small, if not smaller than this. and I probably had about 4 or 5 or 6 leaves this tiny, and I was like, why won't this plant size up? But then I just kept reminding myself that that was one of the times where I had a bad case of spider mites in one of my exos that this was in, and I think that it was just kind of trying to stay alive, and I wasn't giving it the opportunity to really thrive. So I guess that's one thing that I want to talk about off the bat, is that alocasias are spider mite magnets. I have spider mites right now on most of my alocasias. So if you are not one that can handle the stress of treatment every year, alocasias might not be for you. They are very, very annoying. They do leave damage on the leaves, but it is nothing like thrips. I feel like if you have thrips, like no bug can really scare you besides mealybugs, because those are disgusting and hairy and 3-dimensional and have too much circumference and diameter. There's just too much geometry to them. I can't, it's disgusting. But you know, talking about actually killing your plant, spider mites are like a 7 out of 10 or like a 6 out of 10. And they really are just more annoying. They take a few treatments to get rid of. Systemic doesn't work with spider mites, so you have to use like a spray. But you know, I've had spider mites since the beginning of time in my plant parent journey. It was one of the first pests that I was ever introduced to back when, I don't know, I first started with like succulents. Like my succulent had spider mites. What freaking succulents get spider mites? Mind you, apparently. So yeah, they're annoying, but they're not a death sentence for your plants. It's just kind of requires you to be a little bit more vigilant, stock up on a few more like insecticidal sprays, but not a huge deal in my opinion. I get spider mites every year. It's just kind of a part of my spring and summer, and I've accepted it. So yeah, this was one that really did not have the best start in life because it kept getting spider mites. But when I finally got that under control, whoa. Oh my gosh, I thought that was a spider. It was just a sheath. I will show you later my spider mite treatment for alocasias in this video. I'm not gonna do it right now, but yeah, I will talk more about spider mites later in this video, and we'll treat some of these for spider mites so you can see how I kind of handle a situation like that. But yeah, anyway, this is my alocasia silver dragon. It is getting a lot bigger. You can see some of the spider mite damage on this plant. I think you might be able to see it. There should be like little spots here. I don't really see it in the viewfinder, but it's there. This one is in soil, but like I mentioned, I'm gonna be moving all of my plants to passive hydro. I will tell you why later, but it's actually done quite well in soil. I think I repotted this in a collab I did with Alice, and I believe it was in moss. I can't remember what I had it in originally, but if I had to take a guess, I think it was moss. I'm gonna have to look back at the footage and see what it was in. But yeah, not a ton of roots right now, and I'm even a little bit hesitant to move this because it's like not root bound yet. But I just find that my alocasias do much better in passive hydro for different reasons. So maybe it might be a good time to transition it before it gets a little too rooty. Oh, it has a new leaf coming. I don't like repotting when new leaves are coming in, but there are new leaves coming in on every single one of them, except for one. Whatever, do what we gotta do. The next one that I have here is an Alocasia Maharani. This one is probably, no, this isn't my most recent one. This one I did struggle with a bit. I grew it from a corm, it died back, regrew it, died back, regrew it. So this is try number 3, and I think I've finally gotten it down, and I think the answer was passive hydro. It was in soil for the longest time. That's what I grew the corm in. I grew it in soil. I let it kind of sprout in soil, and then I left it, and it just kept dying back. I don't know what it was. So I moved it to passive hydro maybe a month and a half ago or 2 months ago or something. And now I'm finally out of the one leaf club. There's another one on the way, and a little teeny tiny corm inside of here must have sprouted because now I have a second plant here, which is very exciting. So yeah, this one is like incredible. I love the texture of these leaves. They are nothing compared to when they're fully mature, like when they get nice and big. The way that those leaves feel, it is like heaven on earth. Just this bumpy texture. it becomes a lot more prominent as it gets bigger. And I just cannot wait until this plant kind of gets out of its like awkward preteen phase, because we're definitely here. If you look at these leaves, this is kind of what I was dealing with when I first propagated it. It's like a leaf would sprout, but like half of it would melt off, and then another leaf would sprout, this would die, and then the new leaf would kind of not fully develop and melt off. This is my smallest alocasia right now, and it does have spider mites. I can see one floating on a web here. So we're gonna have to get this one treated as well. Next one is my one leaf wonder. This is the Alocasia watsoniana, and I have neglected this thing so badly, and here is how you know. Look at how much of this rhizome is sticking outside of the substrate. Look at all of these sheaths that I haven't peeled back. I am usually so good about peeling back sheaths because I just enjoy it. I really, really enjoy the crunching sound. It's just very satisfying. It's relaxing, but this one has just, oh my gosh. I got this one from my friend Erin, and honestly, it's needed a taller vessel for a while, not necessarily larger, but just taller to get this rhizome under the substrate so that I can actually get roots to form here. So I am not surprised at all that this only has one leaf on it and has only had one leaf since I've had it. It also grew from a corm, so the leaves are very, very tiny, and every single leaf that comes out of it is bigger than the last, but again, like all of the other leaves die off before this one the new one fully unfurls. Very confident that once I get this into no drainage, once I get it into a better pond mixture and get it into the right vessel size, that I'd be able to have some more leaves on this. But in general, just based on the photos I've seen on Instagram, it doesn't seem that watsonianas specifically hold on to very many leaves at once. There's only been a few photos that I've seen of like a big bushy watsoniana, but even that photo that I saw, and I'll see if I can throw it up, if I can find it again, I think it was like 3 or 4 different watsons in the same pot. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. I know a lot of us will compare our plants to plants that we see on Instagram, but you guys really, really want to take a look at the photo before you draw any conclusions. There was a account that I used to follow. I don't remember what his name was or what her name was, but this person had a humongous Alocasia Micholitziana maxkowskii, and so many people were wondering, like, how do you keep it so happy and healthy? How do you have so many leaves on it? And this was like a few years ago. I think this was like 3 years ago, and this person was just very kind of like, I don't know, was kind of like obscure about their answers until finally there was one photo that they showed of it where you could see there were like 6 plants in one pot. They were just all kind of bundled together. Yeah, someone was like, oh, that's how it's so big. There's like multiple plants. But I guess for a long time, this person was like kind of passing it off as it was just one plant. Always keep in mind that everything that you see on Instagram is very, you know, it's not always 100% the truth. No tea. I'm just saying, when I had my Micholitziana, I was like, man, I can only keep like 4 leaves on it at a time on this thing. And how does this person have like 37 leaves on one plant? And so I'm like, wait, if it's like 6 plants, yeah, that would make sense. Just be careful, because a lot of us can get down on ourselves and thinking like we don't know what we're doing, when really, like, again, we all have different conditions. You have to ask yourself, is this a single plant or is it multiple plants in one pot? And yeah, all of that stuff. So anyway, going off on a tangent there. The next one that I'm going to show you is my Alocasia Black Velvet. This is the only Alocasia I have right now that is growing with drainage holes, and I hate it. And this is why. One thing that you should know about alocasias are they are very, very, very rooty plants. They love to push out roots and no leaves. If you have drainage holes, I can almost guarantee you that they will find a way to escape, no matter how small the slit, no matter how small the hole, they will find a way. And alocasia roots are extremely delicate and tiny. Oh my gosh. I swear, sometimes I feel like I live on an airport runway. Removing this can be kind of tricky, but luckily I'm using one of Jing's pots and all of these holes here are fairly large, so I can pull it out pretty easily. But moss is not my preferred growing method at all for these. The only reason it's in moss is because I propagated it from corm in moss. This was one of the original leaves on it. I think there were two other leaves that came before this one, and I just never got around to repotting it. But luckily it's been pretty resilient in moss. I haven't had a lot of luck growing alocasias purely in moss. It's always had to be some kind of moss mixture, but just pure moss, no, I have not had luck. I can see a little bit of perlite and leca in here, but again, it's not enough to really make a huge difference. I have another alocasia in, how do I have no memory? It said that I ran out of memory on my memory card and I was trying to figure out what happened. So what was I even talking about? Who was I think I was talking about the black velvet. Oh, the lawnmowers are here. The sun is out again. The lawnmowers are gone. I'm gonna try and finish this up. I am losing patience. So where was I? This is not great if you have ADHD. I don't know where I was. Okay. So the next one is my Alocasia cuprea. This one just refuses to size up for me. I don't know what it is. I gave my mom a smaller one after I've already had this one, and hers is like triple the size of mine. She's not doing anything special to it, does the same exact care that I do, and it's just, I don't know. But you know what? This one has definitely sized up since I grew it from a corm. Actually, most of my alocasias that I have are grown from a corm. The only one that hasn't been grown from a corm is my scalprum. I do have a new leaf coming on this one, and I actually repotted it when it was very, very little in my, I think it was my propagation video, if I can remember correctly. But the leaf was like teeny tiny. It was like this small. And you know, the leaf isn't huge, but it's a little smaller than my hand, and it's starting to get that nice ribbing. I'm trying to like show you guys kind of the texture of this. I know that some people have a love-hate relationship with this plant. I personally hated it before. I talked so much crap about this plant. I was like, I don't want it anywhere near me. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to look at it. It looks like a weird alien freak. But something clicked, something snapped in me one day, and I was like, I have to have it. Don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the like purplish reddish abaxials. I don't know, or if it's like the sheen under certain light. It's a very beautiful plant, and it gets much more alien-esque as it matures. This one does have spider mites though. You can kind of see some of that in the crevices, but yeah, this one is in soil, and I don't want to be growing it in soil. Yeah, I will be transitioning this one out of soil today. I am a little bit nervous because cuprea roots are so hairline, and I'm actually not seeing many new roots here because I just got this one into soil recently in, again, that collab video with Alice. But I'm just ready to get rid of all of my soil plants with my alocasias. I just find that they do so much better in passive hydro, and I will show you my fried egg that is in passive hydro. This one has actually sized up so much. I also grew this one from a corm. Initially, it was probably about half of the size of this one when it first came out. I've gone through maybe 4 leaves, but this one has actually been holding on strong to a lot of leaves, and I honestly chalk a lot of it up to being in passive hydro. It loves pond. I recently repotted this one into a bigger vessel. It was in the tiniest little thing. Without getting too much into detail about why I feel like it's done so much better in passive hydro than soil or moss or any other mixture, I will just say that I am pleasantly surprised with how strong this one has been. This one was never really one that I struggled with, like only being in the one leaf club. It's always been in passive hydro. It's always been in pond. And I mean, look at her. She's getting really, really big. This leaf is about the size of my hand, so we're definitely getting some size. If you watched the video I did of Erin's plants with Alice, you'll see how big hers is. Hers is also in no drainage, in pond, and her leaves are like probably, I want to say 3 times the size of this. Like, I think her leaves are about this big. They are huge. The last one I want to show you is probably my favorite alocasia of all the alocasias I own, or just favorite alocasia of all time, is this alocasia scalprum. And this one also has spider mite, but it's doing really well still. And I think that this one is also pushing out an inflow. It's just in a mixture of soil, moss, leca, perlite, and some husk, I think, cocoa husk. But it is extremely root bound in there, and it is so ready to move into passive hydro. This one is a very thirsty plant. It's a heavy feeder, it's a heavy drinker, and I just can't keep up with the watering. Before I move on, someone asked a really great question, and they wanted to see alocasias in different states of hydration, I guess we can say. So starting with what an alocasia looks like when it's thirsty. This is one sign of a thirsty alocasia. It looks like a taquito. It starts curling, it starts drooping like this, and you can see it's really curled. And your oldest leaves will be affected first, in my experience, and all of that hydration that's left in the plant is inside of the newer leaves. And I think that's just a way a plant kind of sustains itself and stays alive in nature. They try and preserve the newer leaves, and the older leaves are depleted of the nutrients first, the water first. So this is a sign of a thirsty alocasia, and I will get into this more later, but you don't really want a plant to get to this stage like ever. Every time a plant gets super dehydrated and thirsty like this, you're kind of putting it into a certain amount of stress, and not really shock, but yeah, just like stress. So having a source of water constantly is really important for alocasias. That's why I love using passive hydro. That's why my fry deck is so healthy. I never ever let it get to the point that this is at right now, but this is like basically nothing. Like, this is a solid mass. This is going to be a to get undone, but I think the plan is going to be to soak this in a tub of water and just try and like wriggle out as much as I can. But this thing is very root bound in here. So here's an example of a thirsty alocasia. This is an example of a plant that is gonna need water soon. You can see there is, well, you can't really see, I can feel it though, there is a tiny bit of moisture inside of this soil, but just based on how I know this plant looks once it's freshly watered, the leaves stand up like this, and just to the touch, it feels very thin. Normally, this one has sort of a thicker leaf texture, and this kind of like bulges out a lot more. It's just looking very sort of shriveled and sad right now. This one is hanging down a lot lower than it normally does. It is starting to yellow and go out, but even then, it's like, it's usually up about, all of these leaves are usually a little bit higher. So I'll say that one thing you can do is heavily observe your plant when it is at its healthiest, when it's completely watered, fully hydrated. Take photos of it, just know what the petioles look like, know what the leaves look like, and over a certain amount of time, you'll be able to just look at your plant instantly and just know like if it's gonna need water in a few days, if it needs water now, if it's been curled up for too long, and then that's when you kind of want to look for stuff like root rot. But yeah, this is, I would say, a plant that is about to need water but isn't like completely dehydrated yet. And then again, going back to my fry deck, you can see that this one has a reserve of water. I watered this one 2 days ago, and yeah, we've got nice perky leaves, like lots of bounce back. Everyone's kind of sitting a little bit higher, no droopy petioles. They're all kind of straight. Yeah, it's just really happy and healthy. So I hope that was helpful. Of course, every alocasia will kind of differ and be a little bit different. Some alocasias, especially if your plant is leggy and has a very long petiole, and then like a bigger leaf up at the top, like of course that petiole is going to kind of drop, which is why some people use sticks to hold up the petioles. And one way that you can avoid that is light. So that brings me to my next topic. The environmental conditions that I give my alocasias are pretty much all the same. They are all sitting in the same Exoterra right now. That Exoterra has 3 10-watt light bars on the top, but it is a particularly dry exo. That's because I haven't saran wrapped the top. So there's just a piece of glass sitting on top of it that's holding in a little bit of the humidity, but some of the mesh is exposed. I have acclimated these to live in lower humidity, but it does get pretty warm in there because there are the 3 light bars. So the substrate dries out pretty quickly on the ones in moss and the ones in soil. In terms of the light, you don't want it to be too close to the light because I find that alocasias actually bleach really easily, and I'll show you an example of that. This is the newest leaf to come out on my scalprum, and this one is the closest to the grow light of all of my alocasias because you can see this hole right here. I actually have it hanging in the corner of an exo, and this leaf I would say is about 6 inches from the grow light. And if you look at the corners here, or if you look at the edges, there's almost this yellow sort of bleaching that you see kind of moving in towards the center, and that is from too much light. In comparison to all of them, you can see that all of them are kind of starting to face upward towards the light, whereas they used to kind of fall down this way. And since this one is the closest to the grow light, it's getting bleached the most. If you watch my June favorites updates video, and I'll throw up the thumbnail right now, I show you my Philodendron glorious that has pretty bad bleaching from grow lights, and you can kind of see what more like bleaching damage looks like on leaves. So I hope that's helpful. I would just say always make sure that your light, if you're gonna do anything stronger than like a 24-watt light or panel or whatever, I would say a foot away minimum from the grow light because they will bleach. Yeah, I think I got my first alocasia back in 2019, I think it was. And back in 2019, I definitely did not know a lot about alocasias. I struggled with them a lot. So it hasn't really been until the beginning of this year that I've felt like, okay, my routine and the things that I'm doing, they make sense, they're working for me. And so that's why I'm only deciding to do this video now. I have had requests for this video when I first started my channel, but I wasn't like 100% confident yet. And I'm still not really 100% confident, but I feel like I can tell you guys enough to at least be out of the one leaf club, which is a huge thing with alocasias. Some of you guys already know that. And I think I know enough to kind of make you less afraid to buy alocasias because alocasias are so fun. They are so rewarding to grow. They are beautiful plants. And I would hate for anyone to be deprived of that because of like maybe 1 or 2 things that maybe they can tweak in their routine or the way they care for them. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is the reason why I am going to be moving all of my plants to Lechuzapon. And like I showed you with my Frydek, it's just because they just do so well in it. They are thirsty plants. I would say they're heavy feeders. They like a constant source of water, and passive hydro just seems to make sense for me because with soil, I'm a little bit more apprehensive to keep something constantly damp if it isn't something like soil. But if it's like passive hydro where I always usually have a reserve of water, that makes me feel a lot better. Same with moss. If your moss is just kind of like always damp, always wet, it can get really mucky and gross in there. For me, the perfect combination for alocasias is absolutely 100%. I cannot be convinced otherwise. It is no drainage with Lechuzapon. And Aaron's humongous Frydek is growing in that combination, and as you can see, and I'll throw up the footage again here because I just love looking at it. Her plant is beautiful. Like, look at it. It's amazing. It's huge. It's healthy. The leaves are like the size of my body. It's an amazing specimen, and I am just really excited if all of my alocasias take to life in passive hydro without any hiccups. I am a bit afraid of some transition shock. I'm afraid I might lose some, particularly with my scalprum. I would be absolutely devastated. Like the other ones, obviously I love, but I just Not that I can, obviously I can live without them, but they can be replaced. I just have this attachment to my scalprum that I can't explain, so I'm very, very nervous about that one. Today we will be repotting 6 of my alocasias. I'm gonna go through all of the Q&As. I'm gonna talk about how to keep your alocasia out of the one leaf club, what my favorite substrates to use for propagating bulbs. I'm gonna show you how I propagate bulbs. I'm gonna talk about watering. I'm gonna talk about alocasias going dormant, when you know it's time to repot, spider mites. We're gonna cover as much ground as we can in the alocasia world. So with that said, I'm going to clean up here and I will meet you in the plant room. We're gonna prepare some pon. I'm gonna show you my pon mix, and then we're gonna be in repot land for probably the next hour. So yeah, I'll meet you in the plant room. Before I touch any of the plants, I need to make my pon mix. I have rinsed lechuza pon with a tiny bit of perlite in here that is triple rinsed, and then I have orchiata here. I talked about orchiata in my last week of plant to-dos. I'm not going to repeat myself, but I will quickly throw up some highlights on what the benefits of orchiata is. And then I also have some rinsed coarse perlite. So I just need to mix this all in to this box here, and then I'll have enough pon to do all of my alocasias and have some left over. Pon is mixed, and now I think the first one I'm going to start with, not actually doing it, but I need to soak my scalprum. I'm going to just pluck this right out. And just let it soak in here for a while. I'm going to work on another one in the meantime, but I just want to get this one really saturated, and probably needed a larger bowl, but this will do. Let's do my Watson first. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? Ow. It's a very unnatural angle. Okay. Wow, this root system is awful. It's so bad. It's like the tiniest little thing ever. There's a little bulb coming out. Oh, there's 2. Okay, what do I want to do here? I think that I can keep rooting it in passive hydro, but we've definitely had some root rot. I can see it mushing off, like this one right here, just comes right off. And I knew that I had some root rot in here because it was coming out of the bottom and now it's not anymore. So it's in here somewhere. Okay, well that was not ready to be separated. To be fair, I didn't even know there were gonna be corms in here. First thing I'm gonna do, obviously, is get this cleaned up. And you know what? I think I'm actually going to rehab this in moss, in no drainage, because this root system is terrible. Oh my gosh. I don't know what to do about this. It's not ready to be separated yet, but it's so fragile and it's gonna be totally under the moss. We might need to just sacrifice it. Not feeling great about that. Oh no, it's so mushy, you guys, just coming off. How is this thing even alive still? It's got like a little tiny boner, so funny. This one is going to be rehabbing for a while in a Starbucks cup. I don't want to use any of my vessels for a rehab, but I am going to be dipping as much of this rhizome into my rooting hormone mixture as I can. This was a very invasive clean, and obviously we lost some roots, but I kind of already knew that this one was like not doing well. I'm feeling pretty good about rehabbing it in moss though. I feel like moss has always been a really, really good substrate for kind of bringing alocasias back to life. It's just not a great long-term growing medium. So I'm gonna get this nice and coated, get the roots nice and coated. And for the 5 millionth time, this is a mixture of rooting hormone, cinnamon powder, and sulfur dust. And I'm gonna opt for no drainage because I want to enclose a lot of humidity in there, and once this thing does start rooting, I am not trying to have any escaped roots like last time. I am slightly worried about that corm being so far down the rhizome, and I could chop it, but I really don't want to. I mean, I could chop the rhizome, but I kind of want to leave it just so that once this plant does bounce back, I think that it'll have a better chance at having larger leaves once it's rooted. I'm not going to pack it super tightly so that if that corm does anything, I think that it should be able to find its way out of here. But yep, I'm just going to leave this for now. I did forget to treat it for spider mites, but I did do a treatment not too long ago, so I think this one is okay for now. Let's do the Maharani next. I am so afraid of alocasia roots. Like, look at how fine some of these are. Like, these are nothing. They're just a memory of a root. There's nothing there. It's like dust. Gotta be so gentle. And I'm not going to remove all of it. I am just going to try and separate this corm. Here's what I'm gonna do. This has its own little rhizome now. It's growing out of the original bulb. So I'm going to chop it off and just hope that it's okay. I've done this before, had no issues, but never done it on a Maharani. Quick little snip. We are separated. I'm gonna work on this little guy first. Whoa. And just kind of show you how I would go about doing this. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, where's my scraper? Excuse me. Where's my, oh, here. First thing I'm going to do is peel back this little corm and remove this like top layer of like husk or like bark that's kind of formed on it. You want to be very careful though, because this stem is so tiny. This part is not necessary, but I do find that it helps with the rooting process a lot more. You can get some roots to push out of here, which will in turn help the growth of your corm. I'm not gonna get close to the areas where there's roots already. So there's like roots right here. I'm not gonna touch up there, but there's nothing here. So I'm gonna just try and peel back as much as I can. And you basically just wanna expose the tissue that's underneath. And so this is the same thing when you're harvesting the corms. If you find that it has this layer of husk over it, or this layer of like bark, just peel it back. And I promise you they will root so much easier and faster for you than if you keep it on. I've done it both ways, but leaving it on takes so freaking long, and sometimes I just don't have the patience for it. Okay. Clean this off, and that's really all I'm gonna do. I'm also gonna be dipping this little dude in my rooting hormone mixture. Why is my phone blowing up? So it's not super deep, as you can tell, it's just right about here, and I'm just filling enough very lightly around this petiole. Since it is very delicate, you kind of want to give it a little bit of support if you can. And then that's it. So usually after a repot like this, I'll wait a little bit longer, especially if you're going to be using mycorrhizal inoculants, which I forgot to do on this one, but you can because it has roots already. And I just kind of let it sit for an hour or a few hours, and then I'll go in and add some water. This plant has been a really good example of some of the questions that I got in. So one of the questions was, can the corms still grow in passive hydro? And the answer is absolutely yes, they can. It's just with pon, it's a little bit more difficult because of how dense and heavy the substrate is. It's a little bit harder for them to push out of the pon. I've had some where it was really, really far down the rhizome and it looked like the corm was coming out, and then it kind of just snapped before it could fully emerge. So I just had a bunch of like dead corms inside of the substrate. So if you start to notice that a corm is like forming, and you can see it like on the sides of the vessel, which is another great reason why to use like clear vessels or see-through vessels so that you can keep an eye on what's going on in there. If you start to see one coming out and you can tell it's struggling a little bit, you may need to help it out, or you may need to separate it right away. Obviously, I didn't separate that little tiny one that was on my Watsoniana because it was very, very small. It was too small for me to harvest. It wouldn't really have turned into anything. I have harvested corms too early and they just basically died and didn't stand a chance. So you want to wait until they're like full bulbs, like the one that I showed you that I was peeling back. That's really what you want it to look like when you harvest it. But yes, the answer is it can grow in passive hydro. It's just a lot harder for them to push through. Just keep an eye if you can. And then the other question is, do you have to take the corms out? And no, you really don't have to. If you think about how they grow in the wild, they kind of just grow and then they pop out of the soil, and you've got another plant there. So it's really just like the human nature of this hobby. We kind of feel like, oh, we see something growing, like a new offshoot or like a new growth point has activated, and we just immediately want to create a new plant or propagate it. But really the reality is that plants in the wild don't have humans to intervene and kind of do things like I'm doing now. So you can absolutely keep the corms on the plant, but also keep in mind that now that second plant is going to have to share resources with your main plant. So the energy is going to be kind of dispersed a little bit, which is why I personally like to separate when it's early enough. Not only do I get more plants, but I can make sure that my main plant that I'm growing is getting the nutrients and the water that it needs from the substrate, and it's not needing to share with a tiny little baby. And I also find that when you harvest them, they grow and mature much quicker than if you left them attached. My recommendation would be to separate when it's ready and grow it on its own. And I've had a lot of success growing corms in sphagnum moss inside of an enclosed like to-go box or like one of those seal tight jars. Hopefully I have a corm here that I can show you. I'm kind of hoping that my scalp room has a corm that I can show you how to harvest it, how I propagate it, like the conditions I give it. And if not, if I can't find any corms today, then I'll just show you the corm that I have growing right now, which is an alocasia cuprea corm. So now is the perfect time to talk about fertilizers while we're working on this plant. And that is because you can see down here, I've had a few leaves already die off, and they were all about this small, and all of them sort of had this weird, like it wouldn't fully form, and it was really kind of like mangled. It wouldn't develop all the way. I had kind of these curling edges, and they just all looked really gross. And at first I thought it had thrips, but I was like, this is not like typical thrips damage, and I know what thrips looks like, and this is not it. So what I did was increase my CalMag feeding, and I will throw a photo up of the CalMag that I've been using, but I ordered a new one, and I have talked about this in another video, but CalMag using calcium and magnesium really helps with cell structure and the formation of new leaves and them being super happy and healthy. I use a ton of CalMag on my soderinis, and that has helped so much. Oh, I didn't know it was gonna be so big. Did I really buy the 1 liter? What the heck? So I ran out of my CalMag, and just for the sake of experimentation, I have decided to try a new brand, and this is just the Indo brand, Max Minerals. It is 500, and I have heard good things about this. I've really loved the brand that I used before, but I just wanted to see if there was a difference. So I did grab the smaller bottle of it. I'm glad I didn't get the bigger one because I thought it was going to be smaller than this. So once I started using CalMag heavily on this plant, I was able to finally get leaves that were like fully formed and not like deformed. So I think that it either had like a calcium or magnesium deficiency. So I recommend using CalMag for your alocasias, and then I'm also using liquid gold leaf, but I use all of the fertilizers in diluted amounts. So whatever the recommended dilution amount is, I do it at 1/4 strength. And I do the same thing for my plants that are in passive hydro, in soil. It's just really the same dilution. And honestly, it's because that's all I can handle. I can't handle like measuring out different dilution amounts for things in different substrates. I just want to be able to like fill my jug or fill my pump sprayer and then just water all my plants. I don't want to have to like, you know, measure things out and do all of my passive hydro plants and then all of my plants in soil. I'm just not that kind of plant parent, and I know there are people like that have the patience to do that. I am just not one of them. Anywho, these roots look really good. I did chop this though, so I'm gonna dip it in some of my rooting hormone. And then I'm gonna pot this up, but I do wanna use some mycorrhizal inoculants on it, and I'm not gonna forget this time. This is the vessel I will be using, and I know you guys might be thinking that this is too small, but that brings me to my next point. Alocasias, especially when they're little like this, they love being root bound. My Frydek grew so well in this size for so long, and I wish I took a video of it, but the roots were starting to come out of the substrate. They were poking upward and they were growing out of the vessel. So at that point, that's how you know it's ready to be upsized. But for the longest time, when it wasn't coming out of the substrate going upward and it was really root bound in here, it was like thriving. It did so well. So for my alocasias, I try to not pot up too big. I really let them kind of squeeze in there and grow really densely in there before I move it out. So this is actually going to be the perfect size, and I think that it's going to be super happy in here. And hopefully I can get some nice big leaves on it this spring, because that would make me so happy. So I guess my only advice to getting out of the one leaf club and sizing up your plant is 100% no drainage. If you guys send me a message and ask me for help with alocasias and you don't want to do no drainage, I'm gonna say I don't know how to help you, because I swear I owe so much of the success of my alocasias up to this point to the fact that there's no drainage on pretty much all of them, and I just swear by it. So no drainage. Let them get root bound. I know that, you know, we can get a little bit repot happy sometimes. We just feel like, oh, repot. They're gonna be so happy. They're gonna thank us. But you guys would be surprised at how many of your plants just wanna be left the hell alone and just, you know, kind of left to do their thing. Even if it looks like it's like suffocating in there, honestly, it hurts us more than it hurts them. You will know when a plant needs to be repot, whether it's an alocasia, philodendron, anthurium. If you're noticing that, you know, it was doing fine before, everything is the same, but now all of a sudden the leaves are dying faster, it's declining like crazy, and you're seeing that roots are coming out of the top, or it's just extremely root bound, then at that point I would say, okay, maybe it does need a repot. But you'd be surprised at how well plants do with compacted roots. So those are my two things that I would say off the bat in terms of potting. And then while your plant is actively growing, feed it at 1/4 strength of the fertilizer every single week or every watering. They're very heavy feeders. They love fertilizer. And like I mentioned, I'm using liquid gold leaf and CalMag. I am also going to be trying a new fertilizer soon once I run out of liquid gold leaf, because as much as I like it, I don't really like that I'm promoting a fertilizer that is not available to myself anymore, or most of the people that watch my channel. I think most of my viewers are in the United States and they don't ship to the United States anymore, so I don't know, it seems kind of pointless that I'm just pushing liquid gold leaf and we can't even get it here. What was that sound? Okay, so this one is ready. This one looks good. I'm gonna leave this one for a while. I'm so happy that it's separated from the baby. Hopefully I can do some good updates in a few months if they don't all croak on me. Next one up is this Alocasia Black Velvet. I'll show you how easy these slip out of this pot here. You just want to make sure to remove any clumps of moss that's on there. Slips right out. You can see that the roots that escaped out of the bottom are completely dried out. Another reason why I hate drainage holes. I think the next thing I want to talk about is watering. So a reason why I'm moving all of my alocasias to passive hydro is because of the fact that due to the nature of passive hydro, I can always keep a reserve down at the bottom. You know, the roots can take it into the plant as it needs it. And like I mentioned earlier, when you let an alocasia dry out completely and it goes through that phase where it's very floppy, very curled, you know, there is a certain amount of stress that the plant experiences when you allow it to do that. So I just find that a constant source of water is helpful for it. And you know, my Frydek is doing really, really good in pon, and I just feel like the rest of these plants would be doing a lot better if it wasn't in something like moss. But this one was grown from a corm, and I do like growing corms in moss, so obviously no regrets there. I've never propagated in pon, but I think Erin has, and that might be her preferred method. I don't know, but I've never tried it. But yeah, I would say with watering on alocasias, just if you can help it, like if you can not allow them to completely dry out, don't. I know that some people like to not like baby their plants so that you kind of teach them to be a little bit more hardy, be a little bit more resilient. But if your goal is to just grow like a nice big healthy alocasia and you're not really worried about sort of training it, like in a sense acclimatizing it to being more drought resistant, then yeah, don't let it dry out. But like my seedlings right now, my anthurium seedlings, you're supposed to be keeping seedlings like constantly damp, but I've been letting them dry out a little bit because I want to kind of like toughen them up, you know, like don't get so used to having water. And yeah, now that I've sort of allowed them to go through it, I feel like they're a lot stronger. But anyway, that's not the point. Yeah, don't let it dry out completely. Always make sure that there's the right amount of water in your reserve if you're doing passive hydro. But if you're going to do something like moss or soil, just don't let it get bone dry. Always make sure that there's a tiny bit of moisture in the vessel. You'll just find that your plant will do a lot better in the long run. You won't really avoid guttation. I just feel like that's kind of just part of the anatomy of plants or the biology of plants. It's just sometimes it does that, especially if you let it dry out and then you just douse it with water. The plant kind of takes it in really, really fast, and sometimes you'll see that like you'll get like edema or something, cells will burst and you'll get like damage on the leaves. Think of it as like the way humans consume water. We don't wait until we're like so thirsty, where we're like on the brink of death to drink. We usually drink water when we feel thirsty at our convenience, right? Whenever we want to have a drink. So think of it that way. Like your plants should, you don't want your plants to ever be in a phase where they're like thirsty and they want water, but you're kind of depriving them of that water. Just make them comfy. But then alternatively, you don't want your plant sitting in just like a pool of water all the time. So with passive hydro, just whatever your water level is, usually just keep it there. Your plant will know what to do. Those roots are going to know what to do with the water, especially if you're giving it the right conditions, meaning you're giving it enough light, enough warmth. And then with soil, again, yeah, just don't let it get bone dry. No corms on this one, but things are starting to form, so maybe the next time I repot I'll be able to harvest some. What I am doing here is treating for spider mites and also trying to remove some of these like stains on the leaves. I have a 50-50 mixture here of white vinegar and water. I have 2 tubs of water here. This one I will be adding the pure castile soap, the unscented one. Ideally, if you're treating for spider mites, you can get the peppermint scent, but the frugalness in me says you have a whole bottle of unscented and I don't want to spend the money to buy another bottle of it, so this will have to do. I know some people will add like peppermint essential oils to the mix, but I don't own essential oils due to an incident with Pudge that I don't want to discuss right now, but I have talked about in one of my Q&As on this channel if you can find it. And yeah, ever since then, no diffusers, no essential oils or anything of that nature is allowed in this house. Okay, first things first, I am going to just wet these leaves. I'm going to take my vinegar and water solution and just take a toothbrush and then just scrub the leaves. You don't have to go very hard, just kind of enough to clean the leaf blade as much as possible. This This method is not always successful, but it has worked for me in the past. And then I'm just gonna use the same toothbrush, or you can use like a sponge or something, and I'm gonna just use this soapy mixture to clean off the abaxial and the adaxials, and also the stems and the petioles. And this is just to remove any spider mites that are on here. You can also just do like a full soak as well if you don't want to do this method. Either way works, but since I'm already here doing this, I'm gonna do it this way. But this plant is definitely small enough where I could just like completely submerge it in a bath and call it a day, but we're just gonna go this method. I feel like I've showed the soaking method on this channel already before. Maybe in my import video. Because on some of my imports where I know it's coming from a place where they've like historically sent me plants with thrips or something, I'll do like a really invasive and aggressive treatment upon arrival for pests just in case. I've had people comment saying like, wow, you like put so much care into your plants and you're so like tedious and like thorough. And honestly, it's only because it's therapeutic for me. I would say even more so before I started YouTube, like I would just either listen to music or put on a movie and just do stuff like this. And I could literally be here for hours and not even realize it. And it's just been so good for my mental health, and that's another reason why I've like found so much purpose with this channel. Obviously it's gone way further than wanting to share my collection with people on YouTube on a deeper level than I can on Instagram, slash kind of having like a side job, I guess. All the people that have like benefited from the things that I've talked about, or like some of my methods that I do, and that are creating an even stronger relationship with their plants from my videos and stuff, like that's really special to me. I just know how much plants mean to us and can severely like improve our mental health. I mean, it goes both ways. That was the purpose of my anxiety, depression, and plants video. But you know, for the most part, this hobby is just so good for you, like on so many levels. And so if I can just help people kind of create a new relationship with their plants, or just find ways to make this hobby easier for them, or like help with issues they were having in the past, like that's just like really, really special to me, because I do kind of savor moments like this where I just get to be with them and take care of them. And I know some people might think that this is like overly invasive and it's just too much, but honestly, our plants are they're built a lot differently than the plants that are living out in the wild and are kind of used to us like fiddling around with them to a certain degree. But anyway, totally going off topic now. This one is ready to go. This is the vessel that I'm going to be using. It's a little bit bigger than I would want, but honestly, my vessel choices are extremely limited right now. I haven't found a day where I can really go thrifting, and I don't really want to go on a day where I'm like rushed. I just want to be able to take my time and stuff. So hopefully soon when my schedule calms down a little bit. Talking more about spider mites, Obviously, I'm not here to tell you how to never get spider mites. I'm speaking as someone who has spider mites right now and who gets spider mites every year, no matter what I do. But I've had really bad infestations before where it affected my entire collection. Right now, I do have spider mites on a lot of my plants, but it's very isolated to like one exo or like one shelf or something. It's not like a complete outbreak where it's all over my plant, it's everywhere. So that's what I mean when it gets to that point, because I've definitely been there with spider mites and thrips. It's, I forgot my go, dang it. This is what happens when I YouTube. I can't like do two things at once. I'm like so freaking distracted. I don't know how to completely avoid it unless you're going to always be using something like predatory mites, which again are not even like a 100% guarantee that you'll never get spider mites. I've had spider mites and thrips while actively using predatory mites that are supposed to feed on all of those. But you know, it helps contain outbreaks. That's what you want to avoid. The outbreaks are the ones that make you want to throw away your entire collection and find a new hobby and make you feel like you're going crazy and you want to cry, because trust me, I have been there before. So I don't think that it's realistic to say like there's a method that will 100% guarantee that you'll never get pests. Pests are just around. It's just part of the hobby. So all I can say to avoid a full outbreak is to constantly wipe down your leaves, constantly give them a spray down, give them a shower, whatever you need to do. Kind of like thrips, like if you have a plant with active thrips that have like larvae embedded in the leaves, it's like controlling the colony, right? Like controlling the amount of them at once is going to be key in getting rid of them. You just constantly want to be wiping away the ones that are exposed, the ones that are outside that you can see. So even if it feels like it's just this repetitive process that isn't working, trust me, you are making a difference. You just have to be really on top of it. So whenever I can, like especially my plants out in the living room, I'll just like wipe them down while I'm watching something, or just kind of take a peek at all of my plants to see if I see any webbing, especially during the spring and summer when they're like most, I would say, prominent. Like I don't really get them a lot during the fall and winter, but definitely in the spring they start popping up more. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but systemic does not work for spider mites, so you can't use those, but you can definitely use a pesticide spray, and I'll show you the ones I'm using, or you can use predatory mites. In terms of the pesticide spray, this is the one that I've been using for the longest period of time. Oh, that's the French side. This is just the Safer's insecticidal soap. I just spray it on there, I leave it on there. Sometimes I'll spray and just kind of wipe and like move it around the surface of the leaf blade, or I'll use Captain Jack's Dead Bug Spray. This one is really good. I also use it for thrips, but it kills thrips, spider mites, beetles, soft fly larvae or whatever, and even stuff for like outdoor like caterpillars and stuff, but I primarily use this for thrips and spider mites. Sometimes I use them together, just depending on how bad like the infestation is or the outbreak is. But if you're gonna go the predatory mite route, I've had really good luck with spicle mites, I think I'm saying that right, or Thripex. Thripex is great. I feel like the Thripex is more active than spicle mites, and they hatch a lot more in terms of like when you receive the packets. Like the Thripex is everywhere. I don't know if it was just a bad batch that I got of the spicle mite. They were very effective, but there wasn't as many of them. So give those two a try if you already haven't. If you're in Canada, I use Coppert. I have used another brand before. Hated it, did not like it. I basically had no mites hatch with the other one that I got. So definitely go with Coppert if you're gonna go that route. You can do a group order with friends, because I think that the minimum order is like 100 or something. And I don't really know of any predatory mite companies in the States, but if someone wants to drop a link or whatever and you guys want to share information in the comments, please feel free to do that. Let's continue. The next one I'm gonna be working on is this silver dragon, and I kind of feel bad for repotting it so soon. It's only been a couple weeks or like a month and a half since I repotted this, but I really want to get all of my alocasias into passive hydro. So we're just gonna get it out of there. Got 3 more left, and these 3 are all in soil. So now that we're working with soil, let's talk about soil mix for alocasias, because I do want to address this for people who are not going to be using lechuzepon or leca or whatever. I find that alocasias, why is this, my external charger thing is dead. So I've got about 15 minutes left of recording time before this thing takes a crap on me. All right, I wasn't expecting any corms or anything because I just harvested all the corms the last time I repotted this. But I do want to take off as much of this soil as possible. So I need to soak this in some water, but I don't want to use that because I'm going to use that to clean the leaves. I'm going to take this to the sink and remove as much of this soil as possible. It's not great, but it'll do for now. Just going to try and remove old sheath and clean it up as much as possible, but I don't have much time here. Before I get this potted up, I'm going to do a spider mite treatment. Something I forgot to mention with spider mites is that unfortunately, you have to change your original substrate because there are eggs everywhere. There are spider mites everywhere. So make sure that you change out your substrate and sterilize it. I would not like reuse it as is, obviously. Typically when I have a soil that was infested with spider mites, I will not reuse it like the way that I reuse soil for plants that are, you know, were perfectly healthy or whatever. The good thing about spider mites though is that you have a little bit more time to react and save your plant, whereas something like thrips, if you don't act quickly, your plant can deteriorate fast over a short period of time. Spider mite damage is sort of a slow burn, but once you see it enough and know the damage that it leaves behind, you can catch it very quickly. This leaf is seriously so like pillowy and delicious. I love it so much. It's got like this really nice like gray color opposed to like a more white. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait for this thing to size up. So beautiful. It's like a pillow. It's like so like plushy. It's like a stuffed animal. Sorry, it's kind of all over the place, but I was talking about soil mix for alocasias. The soil mix is not all that different than you would use for like a standard aeroid, but if you can make it a little bit denser, whether it be to add like chopped up sphagnum moss because sphagnum moss retains water, or you add like less perlite or less bark. I wouldn't recommend adding less perlite, but I would definitely recommend adding less bark or whatever other substrate you use to increase aeration. Because alocasias are so thirsty, if you have it in too dense of a mix, kind of like my scalprum is right now, you are going to be watering that thing constantly. It's going to be very stressed out because it's going to like be depleting its water too fast. If I had to kind of break it up, I would say maybe 60% soil, 30% perlite, and then 10% something else like bark. A lot of alocasias at the nurseries grow in just like straight up like peat moss or something, and they grow really well. So nothing too aerated for sure, but you don't want it to be like completely compacted. You want those roots to be able to breathe, especially since some of them are so hairline and tiny like that one. Yeah, those just break off really easily. Another thing you can do if you're gonna do no drainage with soil is add a layer of leca down at the bottom so that you have a little area down below for a like reservoir, and you can always keep water down there, and your roots that grow into the leca are going to be more acclimatized to being in water, being submerged in water. And that's one way that you can prevent it completely dehydrating if you are going to do soil or want to do a standard aeroid mix, like a really chunky mix. Yeah, I would recommend doing some leca down at the bottom and opt for a deeper vessel rather than a wider vessel, because alocasia roots love to swim downwards rather than like grow outward. That's just been my experience. So I find that even if you can't get it into a wider vessel, if you can even just get it into a deeper one, it will love you just the same as if you were to size up going this way. So this one is done. There's lots of air pockets down the sides, but I am gonna poke it in just a little bit more. Done and done. What the heck is my fried egg? Oh, I'm not repotting my fried egg. I am not sure if I'm going to have enough time today to repot all of these, but I'm gonna try. But yeah, my camera is almost on its last leg. This one is not very rooty, and I can see some root rot here. It was probably from the last transition. I think I did it from moss to soil, I think. Not good. So I think in that case, since this one is another sort of rehab-y one, I'm gonna put it back in moss. But I'm not worried because this one is still growing. Where's my earwax scraper? All I smell is this vinegar. Yeah, we have a new leaf. I know it's not like completely dying or whatever. The stem is nice and healthy, but I am gonna clean this up a little bit and we're just gonna get it back in moss. I think that this soil mix was a little bit too dense. I could have added a little bit more perlite, and this one was at the very, very bottom of, whoa, this one was at the very, very bottom of my exo, so definitely add a little bit more perlite than I did. And again, I would just recommend growing in passive hydro. I just don't really like alocasias in soil. I just find them to be a little bit more finicky. And I'm glad that I at least had an example to show you at this poor Cupria's expense. But it'll be fine. She's gonna bounce back. I'm not worried. I grew this one from a corm, and rhizome's already getting so big. It's getting thick too, which is nice. Let's do another Rehab Starbucks cup for this one. This will remind me that I'm supposed to be keeping an eye on them. This one has a few roots, so I will sprinkle a tiny bit of mycorrhizae on there. I don't usually like to do it unless it's like a full root system, but I'm just gonna add a little sprinkle. I need to treat this one for spider mites as well. I forgot to do it before I got it potted. I think I might have time for this last scalp run before my camera croaks. Another question that I got was, can you avoid dormancy? And honestly, I don't really think that you can make a plant do anything that it would naturally do. I feel a lot of bulbs here. Yay, I'm gonna have some bulbs to show you guys. Okay, and they're ready to be harvested too, which is great. I struggled for a few years with my alocasia mycolitziana maxkowskia going dormant in the winter, or just like kind of not ever turning into a full plant. It was always like a one leaf or just, you know, just kind of did nothing. That's a big one. Look how big it is. It's huge. There's another one here. I'm literally just plucking them off. Oh my gosh. I am not selling any of these scalprums. I am going to have a scalprum farm. Oh, is this another one? It's like digging for gold. Oh, it's bark. So yeah, I've just found that you can't make a plant do anything that it would normally do in nature, which I don't think we should be forcing them anyway. But with all of these like IKEA greenhouse cabinets and the exos and the tents, we're giving them basically spring and summer weather year round. And so a lot of them do kind of get, I would say, confused, and they don't realize that it's like time to go dormant or whatever. So yeah, like none of my alocasias went dormant over the winter. They've all been steadily growing, but I will say that when they do go dormant, they stay dormant for a really long time. Yeah, I know some people have had like their alocasias and like never go dormant, which is kind of crazy to me. I've not been that lucky, but yeah, everything is growing pretty steadily with me. So there's nothing that I would say can avoid dormancy, but giving it conditions like warm conditions, lots of light, just basically, you know, treating it as if it were like spring and summer all the time and growing them inside of a controlled environment definitely helps with avoiding dormancy or having them kind of die off for the winter and going back to a little stump, which can be very sad. This is so nasty, but I need to do this because it's so root bound in there. This is like a solid mass. I don't know how I'm gonna, another one! You guys are so big. I'm sorry, I'm like overly excited, but these corms are ginormous. I was thinking there would be 2 in here. I'm wondering if there's more though. Such a small pot. Why did I do such a small? I have been massaging this thing for what feels like ages, and it is still such a solid mass. I do feel a lot of roots breaking, which kind of hurts my soul, but it's kind of unavoidable when you're working with a root bound alocasia. It's much easier if you're working with pond, but this is a very moss heavy soil mix, so it is super root bound in there. And I do expect this one to go through a decent amount of stress after this repot. But I'm just happy that I got some corms. And a part of me is hopeful that I find more. Another one. Number 4. Lucky number 4. Lucky number 5. It's corm heaven. I don't typically get this excited about finding corms, but because it's on my favorite alocasia, I am just like so stoked because I've never actually seen one grown from a little baby, and I am excited. She was so pregnant. Let's go for sextuplets. That sound I make. This is the most fun I've had all week, besides soaking my hand in this mucky mud water, of course. But at least it's coming apart. This would have been impossible if it was dry. All of this moss is like so in there. I'm so annoying. There's another one. I've struck gold. Oh my gosh, my camera's gonna die, and it's like the best part. I might have to repot this off camera. There's another one. Oh my gosh. so much fun. Okay, we're just gonna go in the big one because I can't. I wonder if there's any in here. I'm gonna have to go through this to see if I dropped any in here. There's gotta be at least one in here, come on. That's a piece of fur bark. I think that's the same freaking fur bark that tricked me the first time. This is so nasty. Okay. Sorry, I can't touch my camera and give you a better angle because my hands are filthy. Oh, using a bigger one was way easier. All of these roots are just coming free now. If there's one piece of advice I can give you, it's do not allow a alocasia that you're rooting in moss to become root bound, because I promise you, you're gonna lose like 75% of your root system. I think that tree fern fiber would be a better substrate to root in because tree fern fiber just kind of falls off the roots and doesn't get all like stuck like this. So not that I've ever done it, but I just imagine based on the properties of it, it should be a much easier repot process. Is that a, oh, I think that's the original. Dang, this thing is thick. I think that's the original corm. Fat one. Chunky little one. I think that might be all of the corms actually. Please don't die. I'm almost done. Oh, I see another corm, but it's too small. I'm gonna leave that one on there. I actually see like 3 more forming, but they're too small. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up. I'm gonna charge my camera and we're gonna come back because there's too many exciting things. I can't stop now. This is gonna be so fun to clean up later. So 2 final things to do here at the plant table is to get my scalprum repotted, and these roots actually cleaned up quite nicely. A good amount of root breakage, but we still have a pretty solid root system. I am not mad at all. I am a little bit nervous about this transition, but I am going to keep a very watchful eye on this thing. I'm planting this one a little bit deeper because of how fast this grows. As this rhizome gets longer and leaves start to die and grow, I can just fill the rest of it once that rhizome is exposed. And I'm hoping that this is good for repot for until next spring. Wishful thinking? I don't know. This one grows super duper fast. So I will say when you're doing a soil to pond transition, definitely make sure that there's a good amount of perlite in your substrate so that it's not really heavy and dense. And also keep your water line a little bit lower for like the first week or 2. I wouldn't fill like about this high right away. I'm just going to be filling to about here just to keep enough moisture inside of here and not let these roots dry out, but I probably won't raise the water line for at least another 2 to 3 weeks. I'll just keep it fairly low. Alternatively, you can also just like spray in there, or you can use one of those squeeze bottles and just kind of like squeeze over the top so that the substrate is wet and not keep any water down in the reservoir. Just make sure to not let it dry out completely. If you are going to do that method, you have to keep a really close eye on it, because if you let it dry out, they're basically toast. The last thing we are going to be doing is working on these corms. I was like, I hope I at least have 1 corm to show you. I did not think I was going to have 10. So here's the deal. I think I'm gonna do different substrates for each of these. I have only ever propagated in moss and soil, had success with both. Soil was the fastest, but moss had a 100% success rate, whereas I have lost some in soil. They've just either completely dried out or turned to mush. Maybe I'll do 3 in soil and 3 in moss since I have the most success with those two, and then these will be kind of a tester. I'll do 2 in passive hydro and then 2 in tree fern fiber. But before I do that, this is what I was talking about. When you have little corms that look like this, all you want to do is very carefully, and it helps when they're wet, don't do it when it's dry. Very carefully, you just want to peel off this top layer and just expose some of that tissue underneath, and I promise you it is going to root so much faster. You don't have to peel it completely raw, as long as you can see some of that tissue underneath and you remove a lot of this sort of like barky stuff on the outside. And also keep in mind that there is an up and there's a down. It kind of looks like a little turnip, so you want to keep the root part of it down. This is a better example. This part goes into the substrate, and then this is where your leaf will come out of. So plant it this way. And when I have something that looks like this corm doesn't have a lot of that sort of husky stuff formed yet, I'll just kind of like use my finger or use a towel and just remove whatever is on top like this. And then I'll just plant it. There's really no need to go in with a scraper when it's already pretty much exposed. But I definitely want to do it to this one, and probably this one. I am just going to rinse these off and then we'll get them potted. I totally spaced. I didn't hit record when I planted these. What did I even say? Oh my gosh, I said so much. I hate myself right now. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back. So basically I've split them up. I'm putting them into this little prop box, and I just planted 2 corms in here, and then I'm gonna disperse the rest amongst here in different substrates. I've tried to split them up evenly just based on corm size. I'm gonna do 3 moss, 3 soil, because I have the most experience with those substrates, and I do want to get them to actually wake up and not lose them all for the sake of experimentation. When I'm potting them, I'm not filling up my vessel the entire way because I want to leave some space for the leaf to actually grow and not just hit the top of the bin right away. So I actually should have gone a little bit lower, but this is going to be okay. And I just potted them directly in here, and I have them covered. So the next one that I'm going to do is soil. You want to plant it with the tail side down. Even if it doesn't have a tail, like this one is missing a tail, you just want to stick it above like this, or you just want to stick it in like this, because roots will come out of this actual corm. And then I'm just gonna stick that in here, stick another one. Actually, I'm gonna put the small one with this one, and then I'm gonna cover it completely. That. Do another one with soil since I'll have some extra containers. The key when you are propagating corms is to have high humidity and do not let them dry out. They can shrivel up into dust very fast. So high humidity, you want to put it inside of a enclosed container, under a cloche, something. Don't just leave it exposed in a pot. I just find that you can lose corms that way. Okay, so soil is done. Next up is moss. I'm gonna do 2 containers, or I'm gonna do 2 pots with moss. Let's do the 2 medium-sized ones together. Ideally, I would grow each of these separately, but I just kind of want them all to be together for this little experiment. Oh, that's too much. You really just want them to be covered so that they've got like 100% humidity in there. They'll find their way out of the substrate. And then I'll do 1 with the bigger corm. This is tree fern fiber. If you have never seen it before, it's literally what it is, tree fern. And it comes from, I think it comes from New Zealand. It is a amazing growing substrate from what I've seen. I have one of my Anthurium hybrids growing in it, and it's growing really, really well, and I do need to repot it into a larger vessel, and I think I'll be using tree fern fiber. What I'm gonna do with these is basically, obviously I'm gonna cover it. Where's my lid? So I'm going to cover these and leave them sealed forever. Not forever, but I will keep them sealed for a very long time. They're gonna be directly under a 10-watt light bar. I want it to be very warm, very humid in here. I will air it out once in a while. You wanna make sure that you don't get any like mold on top of your substrate. That kind of happens if you don't aerate your prop bins enough. But yeah, they're all just gonna stay in here until I see some roots or at least see some leaves forming, and there's really not much else to corm propagation besides what you just saw. It's very easy, it's not hard at all. You just have to make sure to not harvest them too early, make sure that you're giving it the right conditions, and that's pretty much it. Hey guys, so it's been about a month since I filmed this video. I wanted to put it out a long time ago, but I kind of wanted to include at least some updates in the same video. So here I am a month later. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate things I wanted to just touch base with you on, starting with the black velvet. I don't know if you guys remember, but this one I treated for spider mites, and I also had some of that staining from my foliar sprays on the leaves that I treated with the vinegar solution. It's just 50-50 vinegar and water, and it worked like a charm. All of the stains are gone and hasn't come back since washing it down. So if you guys do have some staining from foliar sprays and it's not coming off with just water or soap, try a diluted vinegar mix, because seriously it works so well for me. I think there's only been one plant that it didn't work on, but I think that's because it had a lot of hard water stains and it wasn't just like foliar spray stuff. So just kind of wanted to quickly show you that to let you know that it worked. The second one that I want to show you is this cuprea. This one, as a reminder, had some bad roots, and I just put it back into moss, and now we've got a pretty decent root system happening down here. I'm still not quite ready to move this out of moss yet, but I do have either an inflow or a leaf coming in. I hope it's a leaf, because all of my alocasias are giving me freaking inflows, and I don't want an inflow. That emergent leaf that came out a month ago is just the tiniest little thing, which is pretty expected for the fact that it had like root rot and it had spider mites and it was being transitioned. So I am going to attempt to still do this in passive hydro again, but maybe not for a little while. But you know, she's alive and kicking, she's doing okay. And hopefully maybe in another few weeks this root system beefs up more and then I can get it repotted. Oh, it's just so small, so teeny tiny. So, oh, the next one that I want to show you is my scalprum. This is the one that I moved from that very, very dense mix, soily moss mix, into pond, and it has taken to pond life like a freaking champ. I've got so many new roots in here, and the leaves are super happy and perky, and it's just been so much happier in pond than it was in that soil mix. I'm constantly keeping a reserve down here. This high, you can kind of see where the water is. I always keep it at that level, and I'm not letting it get super droopy and shriveled anymore. I'm just giving it that constant source of water so that it's not being stressed out. This one did push out 2 inflows at once. I think it was trying to self-pollinate. I've never pollinated an alocasia before, and I was going to attempt to try it, so I allowed them to start to grow out, and then the oldest leaf was yellowing really fast, and then I noticed the other oldest 2 leaves were also starting to yellow, so I was like, nope, I need that energy for my plant. I harvested so many scalprum corms that I'm just like, if I'm gonna try pollinating an anthurium for the first time, maybe let's not do the one that I love so much. So I chopped them off as soon as they emerged far enough, and you can kind of see the memory of them right there. There were 2 coming in at once. So yeah, anyway, chopped them off, but otherwise this was a successful alocasia transition from mossy soil to pond, and I'm so relieved because I don't know if you guys remember how nervous I was, but I was just really, really scared to lose this plant. But I do think it's going to make a pretty nice recovery in the spring, or right now. I do think that it's going to grow quite nicely once it gets more established, and hopefully it doesn't give me more inflows, because that's not what I want. Another exciting thing are my corms. Where are they? As you would have just watched, I did a few corms in soil, moss, and 1 in pond and 1 in tree fern fiber. And I did this because I wanted to see sort of the growth difference between growing in different substrates, and if there was going to be any difference. I'm gonna move back a little because the lighting isn't great right here. I have been keeping an eye on this, and I will say that the first one that actually sprouted was the one in tree fern fiber. Here are 2 of them. You can see the little growth points there and there. So that one was the first one to come out. And then the next one was the ones in pond. You can see 2 in here, 1 and 2. So tree fern fiber first, then pond. And then this soil one was one of the next ones to come out. You can see right here. I think I only have 1 corm in here. I probably should have, well, I guess I'll know once I rewatch the footage, but yeah, soil was next. I do have another one in soil that just started to pop out, and then the ones in moss popped out last. So I'm just really happy though, because I haven't lost any corms. They've all rooted and are pushing out growth. I thought that I would at least have like 1 casualty or something, but they all survived. So that's really exciting. I am very, 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 very stoked to have a scalprum farm. I plan to keep all of these and grow them in the same substrate that I'm propagating them in, again, just to document growth, to see if there's any difference between using different substrates. You know, they're all from the same mother plant. Granted, some of the sizes are a bit different. Like you'll notice there were some that were really big, and then there were some that were kind of small. So anyway, it's all for experimental purposes. And now I'm gonna push the camera back because you guys are just too close. Where's the lid? Oh. One last thing before I go, I did add 2 alocasias to the family. The first one is from Alice. So this is a alocasia green dragon. This is now the 2nd one in my ownership. I bought one the same time as her. I'm assuming this is one of her corms maybe that she grew from her plant, but it literally died like 2 days after I brought it home. I took it home, I did repot it right away, but I stuck it in my exo and it just died. Didn't even just, the leaves died back, like the whole rhizome just turned to mush, and I didn't even like mess with the rhizome. I didn't do any cleaning. I literally just took all the soil off and then transplanted it and then called it a day, and it just hated it. So this is my second try. She did, you know, I think that she propagated it in pond and is now growing it in pond. So I'm gonna leave it in pond, and I'm glad that it's already in pond because you guys know that I want all my alocasias in passive hydro now. But these leaves are just incredible. They're so beautiful. I'm hoping that I have a little bit of luck this time around. I'm going to be a bit more careful, but I'm super excited to have this one in my collection. I'm even more excited about this one because it is very reminiscent, I would say, of the scalprum. I'm going to try to not spill this pond everywhere, but this is an alocasia sinuata. These have been popping up everywhere in our nurseries, which is amazing because I've only seen them like on Instagram. I feel like the things that they're cultivating in the greenhouses right now are so freaking random. Like, they're not anything that's like super popular right now. Like, they're cultivating like philodendron mame. My friend just picked one up for me for $3 and it's just so random. So anyway, I'm not mad at it because the alocasias that they're choosing to cultivate are just amazing. So I will say, in comparison to the scalprum, I think I prefer the scalprum texture a little bit more, as well as like the leaf shape. I'm gonna try and give you a comparison here without spilling. I can feel the scalprum slipping out of my hands, but yeah, there is a lot of difference. It's not like they're like twins or anything, but you know, it just got that really dark leaf shape. It looks very like dragon-esque, scaly-esque. I would actually argue that it looks more like a green dragon. So yeah, I'm just like really excited to see the alocasia family growing. I'm only trying to bring alocasias home that I super love. My friend who picked up the mame for me, she said that they had like, sorry, I can feel like dust on my face or like dirt on my face. She said that they had the alocasia Ivory Coast there for $5, and I had wanted that before, but thinking about it now, it's not one that I super love, and so I am just trying to be mindful of what I'm bringing home because I have a lot of plants, you guys, and I think that a big project that I'm gonna do this, oh my gosh, I can feel dust and dirt on my face. I think a big project that I'm gonna do this summer is do a big clean out and really ask myself, I'm like looking around, ask myself, who do I love, who do I need, who can go. Like, I just feel, I feel like I might have too much, especially because I'm planning to go back home this summer. So I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, just wanted to show you that I practice self-control. I did not say yes to that other alocasia, even though it was so cheap. It's bothering me. Okay, so anyway, I think I'm gonna go, but hopefully you guys found this helpful. I just want to let you know that I filmed this whole video about a month ago, and that was when I was like really bad with my ADHD. I had like pretty bad anxiety, and like I wasn't really in a great place, and rewatching the footage, I feel like I was just kind of sort of everywhere, but hopefully I got the things that I needed to say across. I will try my best to stay in the comments of this video in case there are questions that I didn't answer. Yeah, hopefully you found it helpful. I hope that this at least maybe gave you more confidence to own an alocasia. I would at least just start with one and just give it a try. They are really rewarding plants to grow once you kind of get the hang of them, and you can accept that there's going to be some leaf loss pretty frequently in the first few months or whatever that you own it. yeah, you'll be okay. So thank you guys for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, because it helps Pudge and I's disability a lot on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who has been here from the beginning. Thank you to all of the new subscribers. Thank you all for the amazing comments that you guys leave me, and I'm so sorry that I'm so bad at replying, but I'm trying to get better. With all that said, I guess I will see you in the next one.